Tsundere. Tsundere! What is a tsundere? Is this a tsundere? Oh, this must be a tsundere.
You're a beta male, Sonic.
But you know who definitely is not a tsundere? This right here is not a tsundere. Well, she is, but there's so much more to her character. All this and more in this episode of... Alright, not doing this bit more. Don't really want to get in trouble. Hi guys, it's Danon, your resident Russian otaku, and today we continue our journey through the world of Mushoku Tensei light novels. In the part 1 of this series, we've talked about our protagonist, Rudeus, and what makes him such a disgusting, yet redeemable character. Today, we'll dive deeper into the second volume of the series and discover all there is to know about another prominent figure in this fantastical world. And why this character is definitely not a tsundere.
Baka?
I'm talking, of course, about Eris Boreas Greyrat. So please, be sure to assume a proper threatening stance, like the video, and get comfortable as we dive deeper into Mushoku Tensei light novels. Okay, so let me set the scene for you. The first volume ended on a high note. 7-year-old Rudeus was sent by his wise and benevolent father Paul to the city of Roa to become a tutor for a young noble mistress. And although Rudy had to abandon his friend Sylphie, this is a great opportunity for him to earn enough money for their education in the Renoa Magic Academy. Let's say you've just finished volume 1 and decided to jump straight into the second one. Well, these are the first lines of the book. I ran. My pursuer was a single wild animal, but all I could do was run. Terror flooded my heart. I took to the stairs running, zipped through the garden, and used magic to scale the roof, stumbling all the way. The creature's terrifying voice rang out as it chased me relentlessly. I thought I had some stamina. After all, I had been running long distances and practicing swordplay for the past few years. Now that my confidence had been shattered, the creature seemed to be laughing at me, its crimson hair fluttering as it pursued me so closely that I couldn't stop for air. Don't give up, I told myself. No matter how much distance I put between us, it would catch up the moment I started to lose focus. I was out of breath. I couldn't run any further. I couldn't escape it. The only option left was to hide. I groaned and ducked into the shadow of the stairs behind the decorative plant. The creature's booming voice echoed throughout the manor. Those words made my legs tremble. The creature's words struck fear into me as I hid in the shadows. I was terrified of this personification of rage, manifested in the form of a tiny female body. You know, when you see a book starting like that, you know it's gonna be one hell of a ride. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This chapter starts with Rudeus and Ghislaine in a carriage on its way to Roa. As we enter the city gates, Rudeus' curiosity peaks and he starts showering his new companion with all sorts of questions about the location.
Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet? No, we are not!
Anyway, Roa was interesting for a reason. At the time, it was a major stronghold and the last bastion of human race in its war against demons. So it gave off quite the impression, even when compared to other big cities. It is said that the castle in the middle of Roa could even be somewhat comparable to the Asuran royal palace when it came to its fortitude, but most importantly, it was the place where Rudeus' future student lived. Turns out, the young mistress is but a granddaughter of the liege lord of Fitoa region, her father being the governor of the city of Roa. And what a bunch of nutjobs those two are! When Rudeus finally arrived at his destination, he was almost immediately greeted by his employers. This is where the anime adaptation and the light novel differ a little bit. In the anime, we are first introduced to the father Philip, and only an episode after that, we meet the grandpa Soros. But here, Soros is the first to enter the scene, with Philip being introduced just a few lines after. And right after making his thunderous appearance, Soros begins to berate Paul, Rudeus' father, and grumble about Rudeus' lack of proper manners. Thankfully, Rudeus manages to defuse the situation by admitting his mistake and Sora's permits him to stay. After that little incident, the butler finally drops the name of Eris Boreas Greyrat. Turns out this hulk of a man is actually Rudeus' great uncle. Neat! Then Philip invites Rudeus for an interview.
So Rudeus, how do you plan to get my daughter to study?
I will ask someone from your household to kidnap her and then torture her in front of me. Then when her Stockholm Syndrome kicks in, I will make sure to thoroughly educate her. The kidnapping will be fake, lol.
And so we are introduced to Eris Boreas Greyrat. Arrogant. That was my first thought when I saw her. She was 2 years older than me, her eyes sharp and narrow, and her hair wavy. It was also such a pure shade of crimson, it looked like someone threw a bucket of paint on her. My first impression of her was that she was fierce. I had no doubt that she would be a beauty one day, but I predicted that most men would find her too much to handle. Maybe if you are a serious masochist. Well, okay, perhaps not quite that bad. Either way, she was a dangerous one. My instincts screamed warnings as I got close to her, but it wasn't like I could just run away. So instead, I greeted her just as Philip had instructed me. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Rudeus Greyrat. Ha! She took one look at me and her nostrils flared, just like her grandfather's. She had her arms crossed firmly over her chest as she glared down at me, both figuratively and literally, since she was taller than I was. Her expression turned sour as she said, "What's this? He's younger than I am, and yet he's supposed to teach me? Stop joking around." Let's just say that their conversation didn't go so well. Despite Rudeus' best efforts to actually reason with Eris and evoke some sort of positive response out of her, he enrages the young mistress instead and gets his ass beaten. The rest of that interaction you already know. After that, Philip and Rudeus have a little chat about how to better handle the situation and decide to stage a kidnapping to teach her a valuable and traumatizing life lesson. Could have just gone to therapy in my opinion, but I guess this works too. Then the chapter ends with a graph. Graph time. Let's call it Eris Development Tracker. We'll get this short summary after every numbered chapter, and this is our first entry. At this point, all there is to her character is that she's violent and stupid, which is expected from a young child who doesn't want to study anything and was spoiled by quite an eccentric and rude grandfather. Not to mention that Eris doesn't even have a proper name in this entry, which is a pretty significant indicator. However, her development from this point onward is what makes her one of the most well-written characters in the series and probably one of the most fleshed out tsunderes out there. This video is sponsored by fucking no one! And this is why I want to thank you, my Boosty supporters. I want to thank Animus Vox, Junaud, and Lada Fanboy. Huge thank you for your continuous support. You guys are the people who keep me going. If you want to access exclusive content that will not be uploaded to YouTube and also support me monetarily, you can do so by going to boosty.to/DanonMac. Once again, thank you for your support, and let's get back to the video. Okay, so the second chapter goes something like this. Rudeus and Philip decide to go with the fake kidnapping to show Eris the values of education and to make Rudy look good. Pretty simple plan, just a little educational traumatic experience. Takes about 15 minutes, in and out. But according to the eternal rule of storytelling, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And the plan gets hijacked by one of Philip's servants. The kidnapping becomes as real as it can get, and Rudy has to deal with the situation. In the end, the perpetrators are caught and or killed, Eris is saved, and Rudeus finally lands his first job ever. The end. Well, okay, that's not exactly it. While this chapter is suspense in its purest form, plot-wise it's actually pretty simple. I think I've just summed it up quite nicely. However, it is a very important chapter story-wise, since it establishes Eris' character and her relationship with Rudeus. We can even track her development in this chapter alone, so let's do just that. There are a couple of important scenes that show the dynamic of Eris' character. The first one is right after Eris gets her ass beaten by the kidnapper. Twice. Now, what do you think Eris did right after this little interaction with the thug? A. Quietly started planning her escape with Rudeus. B. Began to cry. C. Shouted and got aggressive again. D. Shut up. It's C. You fucking knew it has to be C. Anyway, she gets beat up again and was probably expecting Rudeus to heal her once more, but he didn't heal her completely. He did promise to heal her all the way if she was willing to cooperate with him and could promise to be quiet. At this moment, Rudeus realized that although he could just overpower the kidnappers with magic, this was not the best lesson for Eris to learn. He had to show her the value of education and level-headed approach, so there was no way he could use violence. Eris didn't want to give in this easily though. Only after the kidnappers started banging on the barricaded door, she promised Rudy to follow his orders. Naturally, she tried to do everything on her own once again when they finally got out, but hearing their kidnappers chasing after them, Eris finally gave up on that idea. Let's not forget that this is a horrifying situation that Eris and Rudeus found themselves in. And this is the sole reason why Eris decided to follow Rudeus in the first place. This is not elaborated on in the anime, but this event gave our young mistress a new perspective in life. But it's not like it changed the way she usually behaves. She always relied on other people and their protection. And the only difference between her current circumstances and her ordinary lifestyle is that she finally understood that even she, the granddaughter of the Lord of Fitua region, can actually be in danger. However, this little revelation is enough for her to become more level-headed and cautious. From this point onward, Eris even keeps her promise to Rudeus and stays quiet, which is an achievement in and of itself, no matter how trivial it may look. Draft time! The resolution of this micro-arc is pretty climactic. We see Rudeus use magic in a serious fight and get a glimpse of what Ghislaine is capable of. But the most important thing is that this experience awakens something in Eris. After witnessing Rudy's majestic fireball and raw magic power, she grows to respect him and accepts him as her tutor. This change may seem insignificant, but looking at how quickly Eris was able to learn from her mistakes and change her attitudes towards the person she almost beat up to death the other day, it's important to understand what a big step forward it is for her. And so, the chapter ends with Rudeus finally landing his first ever job. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. Right? Well, that's an ominous title for a chapter. Well, it's not that bad. We skip 1 month ahead. Rudeus has been Eris' tutor for a while now, but his success was limited. Eris is eager to learn magic, but she's not that fond of other subjects. And apparently, this is the problem that every other tutor, except for Ghislaine, has faced before. And as you might have guessed, this is the point of growth for Eris in this chapter. So what can Rudeus do to solve this problem and actually get Eris to study? I mean, even Philip wasn't going to be of any help, he just noped out of this situation entirely. And apparently, being all creepy and trying to fill Eris up was not the right answer either. So Rudeus, all beat up and miserable, asked Ghislaine, the only person Eris looked up to for help. As a little girl fascinated by adventures and fighting, Eris was eagerly listening to Ghislaine's every word and every story about her adventures with the Black Fang Party. By the way, Paul and Zenith, Rudeus' parents, were also members of this group. Listening to how miserable Ghislaine's existence was in the past, due to how illiterate she was, Eris began attending all of Rudeus' lessons, albeit begrudgingly. Again, one small step for Eris, a huge leap for the tsundere archetype that usually doesn't account for character development and mostly relies on one-note interactions with little to no motivation behind said actions. Draft time! And by the way, there's also this short conversation that gives us a better understanding of Eris' character. It happens during a sword practice with Ghislaine, when the kids ask her about becoming stronger and whether or not talent and instincts play a major role in achieving strength. The core point that Ghislaine makes is that talent is nothing without hard work and understanding of the basics. However, with talent, one will eventually be able to achieve greater power than if he was just hardworking. It's easy to imagine Eris being a bit overwhelmed in that situation. Her own talent hasn't bloomed yet, and she is surrounded by two very competent people, Sword King Ghislaine and a Saint-tier water magician Rudeus. Looking at her previous actions and attitude, you might think that at this point she will either break or become angry at herself or other people, but the reality of the situation is quite different. Well, I'm not worried about becoming that strong, so it has nothing to do with me, Eris proudly declared as I was lost in thought. I smiled wryly at her words. As a junior high student in my previous life, I'd said something similar. It's not like I'm trying to be number one, I would say, excusing my lack of effort. I was about to reprimand for her attitude, but she continued. But I will do my best to be as good as the two of you. So much for that. She had a goal. She was different from my past self. Nothing happens in this chapter. Just like on any staff meeting or Sunday. Ever. Basically, Rudeus invents weekends, since this world doesn't have a concept of a week. He goes window shopping around town with Eris and Ghislaine, teaches the young mistress about the value of money, and discovers a floating fortress in the sky. So nothing of notice here, really. Just some lore tidbits and world building. But there is an episode in this chapter that is pretty important. While visiting a local bookstore in Roa, Rudeus found out that books in this world are ridiculously pricey. At least 7 gold coins each. A big investment for a tutor with a 2 silver coins salary. This is when Eris decided to help Rudy and buy him a book with her granddad's money. And although Rudeus was against this idea, since it's not her own money and it was important for him to teach her the value of such things, Eris definitely gave him a different kind of response this time around. Okay, I understand. She wore a rare look of utter defeat on her face. This sort of lecture usually meant nothing to her. Draft time! This is the point when we begin to notice Eris's attitude towards Rudeus slowly changing. Nothing drastic yet, but there are some signs of her becoming more dere, or just a bit more respectful, polite, and level-headed, at the very least. This chapter revolves around the biggest event in Eris's life so far, her 10th anniversary party. The biggest problem that has to be resolved at this point is that Eris can't dance. Rudeus has been her main tutor so far, teaching her everything from arithmetics to magic for a couple of years now. But to prepare Eris for the important birthday party, he had to step away for a while to let Edna, her etiquette and dance teacher, take the main stage. Eris, being Eris, didn't really like dancing and refused to continue trying to learn anything related to etiquette. And although that's to be expected of her, this is a really big problem. There's less than a month until her birthday. If things continue like this, she'll shame herself in front of the guest. This is when the first important event of this chapter happens. Rudeus actually manages to persuade Eris to continue learning and starts attending dance classes with her. This is one of the turning points in their relationship. You see, this little interaction shows us just how much Eris respects Rudeus and that he truly cares about her. And for the record, Eris is built for physical activity, and that includes dancing. It's just that she hasn't found her own groove yet. This is what Rudeus helped her understand, and also told her that she should utilize the skills she learned before in her future endeavors. And thankful for that realization, Eris starts to show genuine affection for Rudeus. That's right, Rudeus is amazing, Eris interjected proudly for some other reason. And so, the day of the grand anniversary party finally arrives. There are a few tidbits in the novel that the anime adaptation glossed over. First, Eris actually performed 2 dances with Rudeus. Second, there was no drama with her failing her first dance with some other guy, she just had trouble adjusting to the situation at first. However, there is still development between these 2 performances. The first dance is mostly unimportant. This is just a necessary hurdle that Eris has to step over. The second one is something that she enjoys. This is a more sporadic, chaotic dance with an irregular beat that actually represents her. Eris was enjoying herself. She was finally laughing like a girl her age should, rather than being sullen and pouty as she usually was. Just seeing that was enough to make me feel like it was worth it attending this party. Draft time! On a fifth reading of this chapter, it is clear what this party and these two dance performances represent. This is a metaphorical transformation of Eris's character, from a wild, childish and immature beast to a brave and caring, although a bit unrefined, young girl. This is a form of initiation, and through the process of self-realization, Eris finally accepts Rudeus as one of her role models. This chapter consists of mostly pretty aggressive exposition dumping. Rudeus starts reading a lot and learns more about the sword history, different languages and cultures, receives a demon god textbook from Roxy, but that's not what we're interested in today. We'll discuss all the lore tidbits and fun trivia, as well as extra chapters and whatnot, on a livestream that will happen on
January 22nd at 7 p.m. Central European Time.
We do get a look at Eris's development from Ghislaine's perspective, however, and she confirms some of the ideas that we, as an audience, might have had at this point in the story. First, we get the confirmation on how Eris's and Ghislaine's relationship came to be, as well what exactly our lovable beast woman really thought about the girl at first. And second, we are not the only ones who started to notice that there is something going on between Eris and Rudeus. Even Ghislaine is not that dense. Also, we get a glimpse into our lovable Tsundere's state of mind. After meeting Rudeus, she became more driven and passionate about the swordplay, likely due to her competitive nature. Draft time! Either way, our little Eris continues to grow, and this warms my heart. This is the penultimate chapter of the volume, and although it is not as explosive and world-shattering as the last one, this is when the relationship between Rudeus and Eris reach its climax. Figuratively. So, our boy Rudeus finally turns 10 years old. Quite the milestone that deserves a celebration. And that's exactly the thing that Eris was tirelessly working on. Although he couldn't receive a grand anniversary party due to him being from the Notus branch of the Greyrat family, Philip, Soros, and Eris decided to host a celebration in his name nonetheless. I can help but feel warm inside just from this little interaction. Not only that, but the Boreas family went out of their way to give Rudeus a very expensive, full-fledged magic staff. And by the way, if you were wondering why the sound of Eris's snap sounded kinda dull in the anime adaptation, well, it's actually canon. But this birthday party also had one other purpose: to recruit Rudeus to join Philip's coup d'etat. Philip lost his right to become the leader of the Boreas family to his brother and was forced to give him 2 of his sons. By marrying Eris to Rudeus, Philip wanted to get ahead of his competition and overthrow his brother. Although, to be honest, I still don't understand how that's supposed to work. Anyway, Rudeus wanted nothing to do with all of this, but Philip and Hilda, Eris's mother, already prepared a honey trap for him. Yep, when Rudeus returned to his room after the celebration, Eris was already waiting for him in her nightdress. At first, Rudeus wanted nothing to do with any of this, but his little Rudy only needed a couple words of encouragement to hop on that train wholeheartedly. Oh, Rudy, you fucking dumbass! As you could have figured, this chapter was quite painful to read through. However, through this incident, Rudeus had a moment of self-realization and proceeded to berate himself for 2 pages straight. I'm gonna discuss it in greater detail on stream, but if I were to pick 1 or 2 relevant paragraphs that characterize Rudeus at this point, it will be these 2. After playing so many erotic games, I I thought maybe I understood how the heroines felt. In my previous life, I used to watch thick-headed protagonists be oblivious, and I would think to myself, just hurry up and make your move! That'll be over! What I'd just done was the result of that thinking. As a player, you could see the heroine's internal dialogue. The protagonist, meanwhile, had no idea what she was thinking. That was why most protagonists were aware something like this could happen, even if they knew the other person liked them. So they took their time and slowly developed the relationship instead. In the end, Eris forgave him and even asked him to wait until he was 15 years old. In her own words, she already knew that Rudy was a pervert, and today was a special day, so she thought he deserved forgiveness. Anyway, all is well that ends well. Draft time! Heyo, what? So let me summarize the last chapter of the volume real quick. This is our first proper turning point. We get to experience a few different perspectives on the mana disaster that happened in Fitoa region. I didn't talk about it, but in chapter 5, Sora's Greyrat shows Rudeus a mysterious floating sphere in the sky, which becomes bigger and bigger over the years. And so, on the day of the mana disaster,
The biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history!
a number of powerful people, a hero, a demon, and a dragon, notice something weird happening with mana because of the sphere. Not far from the epicenter of the upcoming calamity, there was Rudeus, Eris, and Ghislaine, who went out of town to watch Rudy test his new staff. Unfortunately, they were caught up in the blast, and Rudeus and Eris were separated from their guardian. From this point onward, we'll get to experience
The biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history!
one of the best arcs in the entire series. But this will have to wait until the next video. During the course of this volume, we got to know Eris and Rudeus better than ever before. What started as a hostile and overly competitive power struggle at first, transformed into a beautiful, although sometimes unwholesome, but respectful relationship. Eris developed dramatically over the span of 3 years that she spent with Rudeus. She managed to not only uncover her hidden potential and develop her abilities to advanced tier level, but also earned recognition from her family and other people. Not to mention that our little tsundere became less tsun and more dere during the course of this volume. As for Rudeus, he's still mostly the same perverted infant he was before, but Eris made him change his perspective on women and relationships, albeit at the cost of almost being, let's not go there. This volume is still one of my favorites in the entire series, and I hope to discuss it with you on the livestream that will take place on
January 22nd at 7 p.m. Central European Time.
I left out a lot of cool things because I wanted to focus on Eris and her development. So stay tuned, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. My entire self-worth independent on those numbers. So please, show me some love. Also, don't forget to share your thoughts on the volume in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next week with another video about this. It's been Danon, take care, and have a good day. Пока. Hi guys, so I've just finished editing this video. Hope you like the new style, the annotations, all this stuff. And I'll just go eat something. I'm extremely malnourished and tired. So see you on stream. Bye bye. Thanks for watching.